Hey guys, welcome back to Joy's Fashion World. In today's tutorial, I will show you how to cut and sew this beautiful and trending lace Bubu Kaftan with bat sleeve effect from start to finish. It's super elegant, beginners friendly and perfect for any special occasion. Even if you are new to sewing, don't worry, I will break it down step by step so you can follow along easily. So grab your fabric, your sewing tools and let's get started. If you love making beautiful outfits like this, be sure to subscribe for more easy and stylish tutorials every week. So this is the lace fabric I will be using for length 50 and it's 3 yards. If you are working for a client whose length is more than 50, I advise you go for 3.5 yards. I also be making use of these black roses and it's 2 yards for the lining. So due to the nature of the fabric, I'm going to use my pattern paper to illustrate how I cut it before doing it on the fabric. So let's do that. Assuming this is our fabric, so the first thing you need to do is to fold it into two. That way you fold your fabric into two just like this, and you go ahead and fold it again into two, making it 4. Like I said, the length we'll be using is 50 inches. Now is to input our body measurement. So we assume our pattern paper is 50 inches for the length. Now is to input our neck measurement. So on my fabric, for the neck measurement, both the depth and the width, I make use of 3.5 inch, but on this pattern paper I'll be marking it at 2 inches and I connect with a curve. While for the back depth on my fabric, I make use of 2 inches, but on the pattern paper I'm marking it at 1 inch due to our pattern paper is not wide enough and I connect it with a curve. Next is to mark our hip line. So my client's hip line is 26 inches, but on the pattern paper I mark it at 5 inches. And on that hip line, I mark my client's hip circumference divided by 4, which is 10 inches plus 3 inch. But on the pattern paper, I make use of 3 inches plus 2 inch for ease allowance. And I will take the 5 inch all the way down. So you add your hip allowance plus the 3 inch and you take it all the way. And on that point, I went out with 1 inch on my pattern paper and I connect it as seen. And that's basically all for the drafting of our pattern. Next is to cut it out. So we cut out the back neckline first. Also cut out from your sleeve all the way to the hem part. Next is to cut out the front neckline. In order to do that, you notch your shoulder line first, but on the fabric, due to the nature of the fabric, I use my chalk to mark out the shoulder line, and you open your fabric that way and you fold it into two, making the neckline having that C shape. Just like that, and you cut out your front neckline as seen. After cutting, this is what it should be looking like. Next is to take it to the sewing machine and you turn the neckline with a bias and also stitch the side seam with half of an inch. So I'll be cutting this on my fabric before taking it to the sewing machine. This is my fabric and I'll be doing exactly what I did on my pattern paper on it. After folding, ensure that the savage part is the one at the opening edge. So next is to input our neck measurement. For the neck, I'm making use of 3.5 inch for both the depth and the width, and I mark it out and I connect with a curve. So for the back neck depth, I went down with 2 inches and I connect it to meet the 3.5 inch width. Next is to input our hip line. The hip line is 26 and I also mark it down. And on the hip line, I mark the hip circumference divided by 4, which is 40 divided by 4 is 10 inches, and I mark it down. I went ahead and add 3 inch for ease allowance and I also mark it down. Therefore, 10 plus 3 inches, 13 inches, and I went ahead and marked the 13 inches all the way to the hem line. And on that point, I came out with 1 inch and I mark it and connect with a curve. After which, you cut it out. For the neckline, you first cut out the back neckline just the way we did on the pattern paper. After cutting it, in order to cut out the front neckline, you notch it. But due to the nature of this fabric, even if I notch it, I won't be able to know where I notch it. So I use my chalk to paint out the shoulder line. After doing that, I open up my fabric in order to form the C shape around the neckline and I cut it out, placing its chalk area to chalk, and I cut it out. After cutting, this is what it's looking like. Next is to cut out the lining. So let's do that. I cut out this piece from the 2 yard in order to draft the front part, though the front and the back is the same thing. So the first thing you need to do is to mark your neckline, which I use 4 inch by 4 inch for the width and the depth, and I connect it with a curve. Next is to mark the shoulder line, and the shoulder I'm making use is 17 inches. Divide by 2 is 8.5 inch, and I mark it down. And on that point, I went down with 1 inch and I slant it for our shoulder slope, and I connect it to meet the neckline. From that 1 inch, I put my vertical measurement, which I mark 8 inch for the armhole opening, 16 inches for the waistline. So for the chest line, I input my bust measurement divided by 4 plus 2.5 seam allowance. Half inch for seam, while 2 inch is for ease. I also divide her waist divided by 4 plus 2.5 inch for ease and seam allowance. I mark out my hip line. I also divide the hip by 4 plus 2.5 inch seam allowance. What I got on the hip line, I mark it all the way to the hemline as seen. On the chest line, I also mark half of my shoulder measurement, which is 8.5 inch, and I connect it to meet the shoulder line. After which, I find the midpoint of the armhole, which is 4 inches, and I connect it with a curve to form the armhole curve. After which, I connect the point to shape the lining. Next is to cut it out. After cutting, I pin it at some spot, and I'll be using it to cut out the second part. So I place my fabric on fold and I lay the front piece on it, and I cut out everything exactly. And that is all for the cutting. Now let's head to the sewing machine. Welcome to the sewing machine. If you're enjoying this video, please give it a thumbs up and also subscribe to my channel. So the first thing we're going to do is to turn the neckline with a bias, and I'll be using this bias to turn the neckline. So you place your bias on the fabric, right side facing each other, and you stitch down using the folded part of the bias as a guide. After sewing your bias all around, you cut out the thread and the excess bias for a professional and neat finish. Then you turn the bias to the wrong side of your fabric and you stitch it down. Once you are done with that, this is what it's looking like. Now is to place our scallop around the neckline. So in order to do that, I've already gone ahead to cut out the pattern of my fabric, and this is how I cut it out. So I just cut out the pattern from the fabric and I will placing it on the neckline. This is it after cutting. Now is to place it around our neckline. So you place it starting from the shoulder line and you top stitch on it as seen. So you place the scallop in a way it will align and look nice, and you top stitch on it. Take your time to do it, don't rush. You can see at some point I have to fold it in order for it to lay nice. After sewing round, cut out your thread for a neat finish. And you top stitch on the neckline as seen so that it relaxes nice and properly. So just look closely at what I'm doing, take your time. And this is what it's looking like once you are done. You can see our scallop neckline has been formed neatly. Next is to join the side seam. So you align your fabric together and you sew it 1/2 inch all the way to the hemline. And I also did same on the other side. Now is to hem our gown. So I did that with 1 inch. I fold it in and I sew it all around. Cut out your thread. Now I'll be taking the gown to the table in order to shape it. So this is our gown after hemming the down part. In order to shape it, you place your tape from the shoulder line and you mark 11 inch for your sleeve opening, and on that point from the center front you mark 1/4 of your chest line plus 2 inch for ease and you connect as seen. Sorry, my chalk is not visible, so just follow the movement of my hand and you connect it that way. After which I pin it down and I'll take it to the sewing machine and I'll stitch along that marked line. I also did same on the other side. I mark from the shoulder 11 inch for my arm opening and I'll stitch it. So let's take that to our sewing machine and sew. So this is it. I'll start stitching from that 11 inch mark and I'll stitch it all the way to the hip line as seen. Cut out your thread, remove your pin, and I also did same on the other side. I repeat the same thing starting from the 11 inch and I sew to the hip line, and this is what it's looking like, and that is basically all for the joining of the fabric. Now let's join the lining. Bring in your lining piece. Start by turning the neckline. So place your bias right side facing each other and you sew it round using the folded part of the bias as a guide. After doing that, turn the bias to the wrong side of the lining and you top stitch, and I also repeat same on the other neckline. After doing that, next is to join the fabric shoulder to shoulder. So you place it right side facing each other, mark your 1/2 inch and you sew it down. I did same on the other shoulder and I stitch it down. After which, now is to pipe our armhole area, so we'll be turning it with a bias just the way we did to the neckline. After doing that, next is to join the side seam. So we'll be joining the side seam on both sides with 1/2 inch and I'll sew it all the way to the hemline. So this is it. Next is to hem the down part, but I'll be leaving mine like this because it's not rough. But if yours is rough, you hem it, and I'll trim off the excess. And with this, we have come to the end of this tutorial. Look how elegant and stylish this lace bubu kaftan turned out. You can rock this to your wedding, church, or any event and feel fabulous. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, and subscribe to Joy's Fashion World for more beginner-friendly sewing videos every week. Stay safe and see you in the next one. Bye.